Welcome to Life Stories. What if the person who saved $1 billion company wasn't an executive in a suit, but a janitor with a quiet smile and a secret past? What if the smartest mind in the room didn't have a degree, a title, or a voice until one impossible moment changed everything? This is not just a story about genius. It's about how we see people, about the quiet ones who go unnoticed, about the man who built an empire and the woman who swept its floors until their worlds collided and nothing was ever the same again. Stay with us, because what begins as a simple act of cleaning turns into a revelation that shakes the foundations of power, pride, and the heart itself. And just when you think you know where it's going, it doesn't. Let's begin. The 21st floor of Grayson Dynamics shimmered under sterile LED lights, a polished monument to innovation and ambition. The air was taut, humming with frustration and caffeine. Behind the frosted glass of Conference Room B, a storm of whispers and raised voices crackled like static. Diagrams littered the whiteboard, algorithms sprawled like a madman's scrawl. 20 of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley stood in silent defeat, staring at a problem none of them could crack. Ethan Grayson watched them from the head of the table, his face unrateable, jaw tight, a half-full glass of untouched scotch beside his tablet. He was the kind of CEO whose silence could cut deeper than shouting. He had built an empire on precision, control, and cold brilliance. But tonight, he felt something he hadn't in years: doubt. He didn't show it, of course. His voice was cool when he finally spoke. "We launch in 9 days. This flaw will cost us $50 million, and probably the company. I don't need theories. I need a solution." Dismissed. Outside, the janitor's cart creaked softly down the hallway. Maya Lopez had cleaned the Grayson Dynamics offices every night for nearly 3 years. She knew which employees left passive-aggressive notes on the communal fridge. She knew the water cooler's filter needed changing a week before anyone complained. And she knew something else, something she never said aloud. She understood the math on those whiteboards better than most of the people writing it. She wasn't supposed to be in the conference rooms, of course. But rules tended to blur when you were invisible. And janitors, more often than not, were exactly that. As the engineers shuffled out in silence, Maya slipped into the now empty room. She wasn't snooping. Well, maybe she was, but something about the chaotic equations left half erased on the board pulled her in like gravity. She set down her mop, crossed her arms, and squinted. There it was again, that tiny mistake, the unnecessary loop, the overcomplicated assumption. Her fingers itched. She grabbed a red marker, erased 3 lines, added 2, flipped a coefficient, and paused. "That's it," she whispered. Then, louder, to no one in particular, they were chasing their own tails. "I know," said a voice from behind her. Maya jumped. The marker fell from her hand and clattered to the floor. Ethan Grayson was leaning in the doorway, watching her with the expression of a man seeing a ghost solve a puzzle. "I didn't mean to," she started, heart hammering. "Did you just fix it?" His tone was neutral, but something behind his eyes shifted. She shrugged. "I saw the pattern. It was overcomplicated. Happens when you think too hard." He stepped into the room, slowly, eyes darting between her face and the revised equation. "Our consultants spent 4 weeks stuck here. Maybe they were too busy trying to look smart?" She smirked, trying to diffuse the tension. It didn't work. Ethan tapped on his tablet, cross-referencing her changes. His jaw flexed. Then he looked up at her. Truly looked. "Where did you study?" 2 years at Caltech. Had to drop out." She said it like she'd said it 100 times, to DMV clerks, job recruiters, rent collectors, family stuff, medical bills. "And you ended up here." "I ended up paying my mother's chemotherapy and my sister's tuition, so yeah." A silence stretched between them. Then, unexpectedly, Ethan said, "Be here tomorrow, 9 a.m., with your notes." "I don't have notes, just a mop." "Bring both," he said, and walked out. The next morning, the boardroom buzzed with tension. Engineers, directors, and department heads filled the room, all murmuring about the mysterious guest Ethan had insisted on inviting. Then the doors opened. Maya walked in, still in her blue janitor's uniform, pushing her cart like it was armor. "Morning," she said, lifting a hand awkwardly. No one replied. Ethan stood. "This is Maya Lopez. She's the one who solved the loop overnight. and she'll walk us through it now. There was a moment of stunned silence, then a few stifled scoffs. One director, a man in a three-piece suit, leaned forward. "Are we seriously taking technical advice from the janitor?" Maya met his gaze. "Only if you want it to work." A few engineers laughed nervously. Ethan didn't. "She's here because she was right. If anyone has a better idea, speak now." No one did. Maya took a breath and stepped up to the whiteboard. She spoke clearly, calmly, walking through her logic like she was teaching someone how to boil an egg, not rewire a multi-million-dollar AI system. By the time she was done, the room was dead silent. Arthur Lynn, the technical director, broke the silence. "She's not just right, she's brilliant." But the applause didn't come. Not yet, because at that exact moment, someone's phone buzzed, then another, and another. Breaking news: janitor solves billion-dollar tech problem. Investors question ethics, security. Maya's photo, smiling in front of the whiteboard, mop in the corner, was already viral. The room turned cold. Whispers, glares. No one said it out loud, but Maya heard it all the same. "You don't belong here." And across the room, Ethan Grayson, who could freeze a room with a single look, sat perfectly still, a flicker of something on his face. Not pride, not admiration. Fear. What would you do if your greatest triumph became your deepest humiliation? And when the world finally sees your worth, but only to tear it down, do you fight back or walk away? Because what Maya did next would turn not just Grayson Dynamics, but Ethan Grayson's world completely upside down. Maya didn't go home that night. She sat in the back stairwell of Grayson Dynamics, long after the sun had slipped behind the skyline, her cleaning cart parked beside her like a loyal old dog. Her phone buzzed in short, angry bursts, headlines, tags, DMs she didn't open. Her face was everywhere now. The janitor genius, the media's new obsession. But it wasn't celebration. It was ridicule laced with envy, praise tangled in condescension. Cinderella of Silicon Valley, one outlet called her. Another headline asked, "Does diversity mean hiring the janitor?" She wasn't being honored. She was being dissected. By the time she climbed down the service stairs and walked home, dawn had bruised the sky. The streets were quiet, still asleep. Her mother, Rosa, met her at the door with eyes full of questions, but no judgment. Maya didn't speak until she saw Luna, her little sister, sitting at the kitchen table doing calculus homework before school. Then her voice cracked. "I don't think I belong there anymore." Luna looked up, startled. "But you fixed their whole system." "I fixed a flaw, sure," Maya replied, slowly sinking into the chair beside her. "But I didn't fix how they see me." At Grayson Dynamics, the silence was louder than outrage. Ethan's office was flooded with messages from PR, HR, and legal, everyone with a stake in damage control. Investors were calling, partners asking if their data had been compromised. He stood at the window, staring out at the San Francisco skyline, knowing full well none of this would have happened if he'd stepped in, if he'd protected her. But the truth was, he hadn't known how. Not because he didn't believe in her, but because for the first time in his life, something wasn't in his control, and it terrified him. He could predict market trends. He could outmaneuver competitors. But this woman who had shattered every expectation he'd built around genius and status and success, he didn't know what to do with her, let alone how to protect her from a world that didn't want to believe she could be real. When Maya returned to the office 2 days later, her badge didn't work. Not broken. Disabled. A security guard she barely knew apologized awkwardly. They said it's temporary, while they sort things out. She didn't wait. She walked straight past the guard, through the front doors, and took the elevator up to the executive floor. No mop. No cart. Just her, in jeans and a hoodie, face bare, heart burning. Ethan was in his office, mid-conference call. When he saw her, he paused, didn't excuse himself, didn't mute. He just looked at her. "Is this who you are?" she asked, her voice even but trembling. "A man who uses people when it's convenient and disappears when it gets hard?" He said her name softly, like an apology wrapped in hesitation, but she didn't flinch. Don't say my name like it means something if you're going to let them erase me." He glanced at the screen, the faces of investors waiting on him to continue. She turned slowly and walked out, not waiting for his answer. That was the moment she knew. If she stayed, She'd become their mascot, not their peer. By nightfall, her resignation letter was on his desk. He stared at it for nearly an hour. He wanted to stop her, wanted to find the right words. But all the equations he knew, all the systems he built, had never prepared him for a moment like this, when the smartest person in the room chose to leave because silence had become complicity. Maya didn't cry until she got home. And even then, not in front of her mother or sister. She waited until they were asleep. Then she sat at the kitchen table, pulled out the scholarship envelope she hadn't dared open, and read it again. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Full merit-based scholarship. Artificial intelligence graduate program. She had applied in secret, just to see if the dream still lived. Apparently, it did. She looked up at the ceiling, blinking away the ache in her chest. Ethan hadn't called, hadn't emailed. Maybe he never would. Maybe he was just another man who knew how to build empires but not how to fight for people. Still, as she packed her things into a single suitcase a week later, she paused when she reached for the lanyard that once held her Grayson Dynamics badge. For a moment, she almost left it behind. But then she tucked it into the side pocket of her bag, not as a memory of what had broken, but of what she had survived. Have you ever had to walk away from something you loved because staying meant losing who you are? Because just when Maya thought her story was over, someone was about to prove her wrong.
It had been 6 months since Maya left San Francisco. 6 months since she'd boarded a red-eye to Boston, heart clenched, suitcase light, soul heavier. The halls of MIT were lined with minds from every corner of the world, ambitious, competitive, brilliant. She blended in at first, quietly auditing lectures, completing projects with a calm precision. But no matter how far she traveled, she carried the echo of a single voice behind her. The one that didn't fight for her when it mattered most. And yet, she didn't let bitterness win. She let it sharpen her. Her professors noticed it. How her metaphors made the most complex systems sound like recipes or puzzles. How her empathy gave code a strange, unexpected soul. Soon, her classmates were coming to her not just for help, but for clarity. She had gone from janitor to peer, from invisible to unforgettable. What she didn't know was that 3,000 miles away, Ethan Grayson was unraveling. He hadn't been the same since she walked out. The company hadn't either. Grayson Dynamics survived the media firestorm, but something intangible was missing. Energy, vision, warmth. The boardroom felt colder. The breakthroughs came slower, and the plant outside the glass meeting room, it wilted. He noticed. But what haunted Ethan most wasn't professional. It was personal. He'd spent a lifetime being right, being composed, building walls of logic so high that no one could see who he really was inside. Maya had scaled those walls in a single breath, and when she left, she took something with her that no acquisition or algorithm could replace. He never told her he loved her. He'd tried. God, he'd drafted messages, emails, even a letter, handwritten in pen, folded carefully into his drawer. But each time he imagined her reading it, he heard his own silence echo back. Until the day of Luna's high school graduation. Maya had flown back to California just for that. She hadn't told anyone at Grayson Dynamics she was coming. Why would she? She didn't owe them a reunion. She sat quietly in the back row of the high school gymnasium, proud tears streaming as Luna walked the stage in a deep blue gown. Their mother clutched her hand tightly, whispering, "You gave her this future." And Maya nodded, even as her thoughts flickered, against her will, to a tall man with too many secrets and not enough courage. The applause was still fading when the principal returned to the microphone. "Before we conclude this afternoon's ceremony," he said, "we have one final guest who's requested a few words. I'm told it's personal." Maya's brows drew together. Then she saw him. Ethan Grayson walked out onto the temporary stage, a little too stiff in his navy suit, blinking under the gym's fluorescent lights. He looked smaller somehow, not in stature, but in certainty. The crowd murmured. Maya froze. "My name is Ethan Grayson," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "I run a tech company that nearly collapsed last year, not because of poor funding or flawed design, but because we didn't know how to listen." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. 6 months ago, a woman walked out of my company. She was the smartest person in the building. We failed to protect her. I failed to see what I had until she was gone. Every eye turned to Maya. She taught me that intelligence has nothing to do with pedigree and everything to do with clarity. She taught me that silence can hurt more than truth. And she taught me that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is walk away. He stepped down from the stage and crossed the room. The crowd parted without being asked. Maya's heart was hammering against her chest. "You don't get to just show up here and," she began, voice caught between fury and fear. "I know," he said softly, "but I needed to say this. Finally, I was afraid. Of them. Of how the world would judge us. Of how you made me feel things I didn't know I still could." She said nothing. "I love you, Maya. I think I've loved you since the first night I saw you correct an equation with a mop still in your hand, and I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm asking anyway, not to fix what's past, but to build what comes next." The silence that followed stretched forever. Then Maya slowly stood. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel everything at once. Love, anger, hope, fear, loss, and possibility. "I'm not the same woman you left behind," she said quietly. "I'm not the same man who let you go." A long pause. "Then I have another year at MIT. I'll wait," he said. "Or move to Boston. I don't care where I live, as long as I don't go another day regretting what I never said." Her lip trembled, just slightly. "And the company?" I stepped back. "I'm not interested in being the man in the corner office anymore. I'm interested in being someone worth walking beside." And then, in front of hundreds of strangers, Maya reached forward, touched his face, and kissed him. It wasn't a fairy tale kiss. It was a kiss of knowing, of breaking and rebuilding, of finally being seen. The gymnasium erupted. Her mother cried. Luna shouted yes, loud enough to echo. Ethan just held her, the way he should have done all those months ago. Later, in the quiet of her mother's kitchen, they sat side by side drinking cinnamon coffee. "So what now?" she asked. "We figure it out," he said, and they did. Over the next year, Maya finished her degree. Ethan volunteered at a non-profit teaching underserved teens to code. They started a foundation together. That Code from the Heart, dedicated to proving what they already knew, that genius, like love, has no zip code. They didn't get a perfect ending. They got something better. A beginning. Written in code, coffee, courage, and finally, truth. What part of Maya and Ethan's story touched your heart the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you love the story, comment 100 below. Where in the world are you watching from? Tag a friend who needs to see this, and thank you for watching Life Stories.